concrete walls, they city lights. What I'm about to say, it won't make no sense, but I gotta get it off my chest. There's so much more than where you're from. It's in the fabric of your soul.
On. What's happening, y'all out there? Welcome on into the Cajun Cooking Experience, baby, where we are live. How y'all doing tonight? Man, tonight we got a special dish. We have a Mulligan Stew. This is going to be an awesome one. One of my favorite dishes. I love a Mulligan Stew. It's something that somebody asked for, and it's one of those dishes. Think of a soup. If you look at everything I have on this table, it's what I put in my soup. Now I'm going to have a stew soup. So it's a vegetable stew instead of a vegetable soup. And it's just one of those favorite dishes with so much history, and we're going to get into that tonight. What's up, Mike McGee? What's happening, Rocky? Trey, what's happening? Lucy, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I should be good. Let me know if you can hear me. Can you hear? What's happening, Kim? What's happening, my brother? Okay. Now we're going to start with this root. Okay, we can hear now. All right. I want to make sure y'all can hear me. I wasn't talking to myself, which I've been known to do. So Mulligan Stew, if you go back in the old recipes and all, they won't start with the root. It's the old way of cooking where they just boiled the food until it got thick, okay? All right, Rocky. Thank you, my brother. So Mulligan Stew, if you go back and look at history, they'll tell you it was invented in 1900s. They tell you it was invented in like the early 1900s. It was invented in the Depression days. I found an article in 1898. That 1898 article was talking about a Mulligan Stew, and they cooked that to welcome back the troops from a war. I guess that's the war of 1898. I'm not sure, but so if that was already happening in 1898, that to me they were cooking Mulligan Stew before that, probably at least 10 years earlier before it got printed in a newspaper. The Mulligan Stew. What's up, Rolly? Mulligan Stew is kind of like you look at an Irish stew, except Irish stew, you use mutton. We're using beef. Tonight, we're actually using deer, okay? So what I want to do is make me a nice, good brown roux. This is we're going to make ours. A lot of recipes you'll find out there for Mulligan Stew, you won't see a roux being made. You'll just see vegetables and beef and some kind of, basically a mixture of vegetables and beef. And that's the way the original Mulligan Stew was made. What's up, Jamie? All right, we're just going to build this roux up and get it going now and keep a good eye on it. There's so many combinations of what people call a Mulligan Stew. And people are asking me, give me a recipe for Mulligan Stew. What do you put in a Mulligan Stew? It's basically anything that you want. But I think as long as you have some vegetables and you have some kind of beef, you're going to be okay. Now, I was thinking about this before I went on. Let's say you wanted somebody that's vegan and they wanted to make a vegan stew. This would be a good combination. They could actually make a Mulligan Stew. And if you want to make it without the beef, just use a lot of vegetables and the potatoes. You probably can do that and actually have a pretty good Mulligan Stew like that. Okay, I've got the thickness of the stew just about where I want it. And this is the deer I'm going to use tonight instead of beef because I was out of beef. And I had some deer in the freezer. That's actually backstrap. This stuff is going to be pretty good. Roland said he just finished smoking, making 125 pounds of sausage ready to cold smoke tomorrow at 90 degrees for 20 to 24 hours. So Roland's one of the people that cold smoke. And anybody that doesn't know what that is, notice he's going to keep his temperature in his smoker at 90 degrees. and he's going to smoke it for like 20 to 24 hours. This is the old way of doing things. When you finish, the meat inside is going to look raw. It's going to be like a pickled meat, but that smoking is going to have it very preserved. It's another way of smoking. There's a way a lot of our ancestors would have done it back then. And but the thing is, the long smoking is going to definitely preserve his sausage. Make mulligan stew sometimes with pork. So Kim, that's another thing. Basically, any kind of meat you want. I was going to throw a little pork in. I had enough deer. I was good. But you can add a little beef and pork in here. If you want to make it with just pork and no beef, you can do that. Man, do anything you want. Like I said, the Irish stew was mutton. So you can put any kind of meat you want. I think the reason why in the United States they had beef, because at that time when they were making this, beef was cheap. A lot of people, when they came from Europe and they got here, they had expensive beef in Europe. They got to the United States and beef was dirt cheap. You can cut up a round steak, which has been really good to make this mulligan stew, and buy a round steak for a nickel, 10 cents a pound back then. So you're talking about an economical way of actually making this stew. All right. Got this baby going. We're starting to change color here. Hey, Vanessa, what's going on, man? Vanessa, we leaving in 2 weeks now. All right, you see how we got that little, I'm gonna dive into this pot now. And look, you see how it just slowly comes back together? Everybody asks me all the time, how do you know if your roux is thick, how thick you want it? Look at it. It just slowly comes back together, but it comes back together. This is how you know you have the right thickness in your stew. That's the easiest way I can explain it. Hey, Jody, what's going on, man? So that is a good way to explain it. If you get that consistency, if you went a little bit too much with the flour, drop you a little bit more oil in it. If you don't get it, just keep adding a little bit of flour, a little bit at a time. Now this thing is going pretty quick because I've got some pretty big burners under here. And it's getting hot in here too. So stewing originally wasn't made, this wouldn't have been called a stew until 1756. I don't know what it was called. I couldn't find what it was called, but it was probably a French name. They could have used any kind of, a name from some other country, but it wasn't called a stew. What stewing was, a stew was a public bathhouse. People were stewing. Eventually slid over into a brothel. And the way it was explained is that the brothel, the bathhouse, nobody had clothes on. And the brothel, nobody had clothes on. So it kind of slid over as a meaning of a brothel. So I guess when they passed by, they went, "Ooh, I wonder if they're stewing in there." Just another name for it. But I found that was interesting. And then around 1756, the name stew was given to something like this. And the difference between the stew and the soup would be thinner. It would be more of a liquid, where this is going to be more of a thicker gravy. Basically, the only difference. And then a soup probably, like gumbo is called a soup. Many newspaper articles call gumbo soup. So you can think about that. So it is a kind of a soup because it's a little thinner. And then some gumbos will call it gumbo stew. Depends how you look at it. So this stewing, actually cooking a stew goes back to probably caveman days, whenever fire was invented. There would have been boiling water in a paunch of, let's say, the animal they killed. And they would have made a bonfire. And this is all they had. They make a bonfire from the animal, keep the bones, make a fire, boil the water in the paunch or the stomach of the animal, and then they would boil their game. Before that, remember, keep in mind, they were eating this meat raw. They were eating things raw. They were taking roots and all and eating it raw. So now they've invented this fire, and they can boil this and keep boiling it with some roots in it and the meat in it and the water, kind of thicken it up a little bit. Man, they were going like from nothing to filet mignon. This was some good stuff. So it was a big step up. And then about 10,000 years ago, pottery was invented. Once they invented pottery, it made it easier to start cooking this. Until then, they were just boiling meat, whatever kind of vessel they could get. Usually something from a natural animal. Okay, let's take a look at this roux. And you can see I've got it a little bit too thick. See how it's kind of balling up in here? But that's all right. I'm going to keep on working it. When you get it like this, if you want, you can add a little bit more oil to it, okay? It wouldn't be a problem. Or keep stirring and don't let it burn. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my onions in. I won't make a real dark roux. I'll just get a good dark brown. This is the way I like my roux for a stew. And we'll just go ahead and smother them onions a little bit. And I'm going to bring in some bell peppers at the same time. Okay. And just, so I'm going to just smother this down a little bit. And what this does, people ask me, why you cook this onions down a little bit? It gets those sugars out of the onions so that it helps bring a little bit more flavor to your stew. So you're going to kind of cook those sugars out of those onions a little bit, give you a little bit different flavor. You could just throw them in raw like that, but smothering them down is going to give it a little step above. Now, they had also Boy Scouts. Roland said he's kind of blurry on his end. Anybody else blurry? That could be something to do with the internet. I don't know if Rev got their stuff together yet since they had that big outage. Because I should be getting really clear coming across. Anybody else blurry? So Boy Scouts. There's articles of Boy Scouts actually out there. And I'm going to throw a little andouille in. That is very optional. Y'all know me. I'm going to put a little smoke flavor in here. Boy Scouts had, let me go look at my computer real quick. Nope, I'm real clear on my end. So just hang in there and see if it goes away. Because on my end, it's really, really good. So Boy Scouts had these competitions, and they were called Mulligan Stew competitions. And they would break up inside the Boy Scout group into different groups. And those groups would compete against each other. And then this Boy Scout group that actually did this Mulligan Stew, I said, my team's the champion, we may compete against somebody other crew. Kim said, check your Bud Light. Jill, you blurry too, man. I don't know what's going on out there in the internet world. Okay, just hang with me. Hopefully this thing goes away. Because on my end, we are very clear. So it's, on my end of the internet's not doing anything. Okay, we're going to bring, now, this is my stock. Remember I told y'all I bought this deer. This is my deer stock that I'm bringing in. Vanessa said it's also lagging like a Kung Fu movie. I'm familiar with those movies. Yeah, we're not supposed to be it's not supposed to be doing that. I don't know why. With all this high-powered internet I just bought, I'm going to have to give Rev a call, find out what the hell is going on. Okay, so now we're going to bring this to a boil. Remember when you're cooking your stew, you've got to boil this roux a little bit. Give it time to get back to a boil. I put this water in. I know I'm going to need more water in here. So we're going to let this come back to boil and add a little water, but let it cook. Let this water boil. You want the starches and the enzymes to get out of this roux. If you don't, you're going to have gritty gravy. Now, I hope it's getting better on y'all end. Because I can see clearly over here. The rain is gone. Okay, I can see I need a little bit more stew. Now, one of the things I'm going to add to, I'm going to use not only the regular potatoes, I'm going to put a little sweet potatoes in it too. It'll be my first time trying that. I'm becoming a huge fan of putting sweet potatoes in stews and gravies. Rocky said they don't have power in South Africa. That's why we're coming in blurry. Rocky knocked all the electricity out. Get him, Rock. So during the Great Depression, this would have been called the Hobo Stew. And why did they call it a Hobo Stew? You had Hobo Camps. You had people, they called them hobos. They would jump on trains and ride from town to town, and they were looking for work. Some people lost everything they had during the Depression. So they would have jumped on the boxcar, rode jumped off in the next town, see if they could find some work. And somewhere you'd have had what they called hobo camps. Or one man would have he called them Knights of the Road. Instead of calling them hobos, he called them Knights of the Road. Maybe you should unplug it and plug it back. Thank you for that technical advice, Lucy. Okay, you can see my gravy has a great, great color. A fantastic color. So these hobo camps would survive, and what they would do at the end of the night, if you was in that camp, you had to bring something. You could beg, borrow, or steal. It didn't matter. Where you at, Michael? You could beg, borrow, or steal, and they may cook it in an open pot like this, and you would have your own tin can, or you would have a little can with a handle and actually cook your own stew like this. This would have been like a little lunch pail. So this is what you would have eaten out of, and you went from town to town with that. That was your fine china. But if you came to the camp, you brought something to contribute to that stew. Because if you didn't, you weren't going to eat. So these things were pretty well regulated. And they also called it community stew, because you built a community of all these people that were out, just down in the times. They were down in their time and they were looking for work, following the railroad. They could have been railroad workers. And hey, if I go watch you on Wednesday, do I need to bring my own beer? Hell no, Roller. We got plenty, brother. Tell me what kind you drink. Vanessa, how you know all this stuff? Vanessa, I just do a lot of research. There's something that's called newspapers.com. If you ever get into it, you'll get addicted to it. And one of the ways I found, not only Google, but if you go into old newspapers, you will find stuff in those old newspapers, and it gives you a feel. You can feel the pulse. You can feel that pulse of the times. You can feel what was going on by reading these old newspapers. You can know what was going on in that town or in that state or in the country. You get a feel for it. And if you read it over and over in different newspapers, you kind of know it's pretty true. So you just a lot of research, Vanessa, which I love to do. And I just have a blast doing it. Mr. Glenn Green taught him all that. So Kim, we had a teacher in Destrehan, Glenn Green, probably the best teacher one of the best teachers I've ever had, not the best. And he did teach a lot. Kim, you're right. And things that he taught us, he made us all read Time magazine during the Vietnam War. So as ninth graders, we understood what was going on in the national politics of the war and the world politics. Believe me, without him, we would have never done that. That's why maybe I can understand what goes on today a little bit. So that community of people moving around from town to town, basically, if you think about it, they built the railroads. They went to different towns and took on work and helped build different things in America. At the times, they may have been doing some work during the Depression that was paid for by the government to get people working. It could be anything. But they had groups like that. They called them railroad camps, hobo camps, that actually followed the railroad, building these railroads. There was a man named James E. Howe, H-O-W. He was the king of the hobos. He was a multimillionaire. His dad was the president of the vice president of Wabash Railroad. But not him. He was rich. But he spent his time with the hobos to try to make their life better. He contributed to their wealth. He contributed his wealth to their well-being. And he called them Knights of the Road instead of hobos. And instead of riding in the private car with his daddy, the rich man, he rode in the boxcars with the hobos. And when he died, I found this very interesting. They were having a little gathering, like a hobo service. They couldn't, these people couldn't go to the funeral, okay? But I'll tell you this. They interviewed him. They said he was as close to Jesus Christ being on this earth as they'll ever see. That is a huge statement about a man. So he must have really, really been good to them. I'm going to put my deer meat in. It is boiled, but it does have to cook a little bit more. Not happy when I found out I was in his class, but it was the best class teacher I ever had. Kim, you was awesome. Got to say it. George, what's happening, my brother? Oh, yeah, you're going to get that spuddy sway, man. What's going on, my brother? Okay, now we're just letting this thing cook. Remember, we're letting it cook a little bit at a time. We'll start bringing in our ingredients. One of the things I'm going to bring in is corn and peas. So I'm going to start bringing some of this in. Man, this thing is going to have color. If you're looking for something, they say color is health. This is going to be high-powered dish, baby. So that's a little corn. Now, something, if y'all remember, I don't buy my corn in a can. This is IQF frozen. They take it off the shelf and freeze it right away. Takes about a second to freeze it. It's called instant quick freeze. And if you buy your vegetables like this is about as close as you're going to get to growing them yourself. And the best part about it, that instant quick freeze is going to catch all the nutrients in it, and the nutrients are going to stay in the vegetable. So the only way you're going to get better nutrition from a vegetable is if you grow it yourself and eat it the same day. Even if they grow it in California or Florida or Mexico, wherever they grow it, and transport it over here, it takes time to get here, and it's losing some of its nutrition. So I find this is a really good way to get the most quality out of a vegetable when you're going to buy it. Cans? Or Rocket, the mushrooms are coming, brother. There they are, Rock. So I like mushrooms in my stew. So y'all know I'm bringing that in. Something else I'm going to put in. Can you buy IQF? Can you buy IQF mulligans also? Absolutely. That's at the IQF mulligan store. I'm going to put a little rotel in. Some of the recipes I saw, they were putting tomatoes in theirs. Remember, whatever vegetable you could find, whatever you could rile up, whatever you could beg, borrow, or steal, you were going to put into this stew that night, okay? So this is cool. There's no rules about what goes to that mulligan stew. It's what you like that's going to go into your mulligan stew because you have to eat it. And if your neighbors come over and they don't like it, that's all right. Tell them to go home and cook their own. All right, we're going to let this cook down a little bit. We'll keep this fire up a little bit. Now, this is something that I found very interesting. In I want to say this 1971, 1972 era, Kansas State University sponsored a show. It was called the Mulligan Stew Show. So I started seeing this TV guide, and it's got Mulligan Stew Show they're talking about. So where the hell? I thought I was lost. I thought there was a misprint. They made a show, and it was geared to 9 to 12-year-old kids, which would have been me in 1972. I was probably about 12, 13 years old. So in that age group, they were trying to teach them to eat a balanced diet and why they should eat it. And the name of some of their shows, I'll give you some of the names. The Great Nutrition Turn On. It was about a town. Everybody was tired. The animals were tired. The cows were tired. Everybody, the people. And it showed that if you eat healthy, if you eat a balanced diet, you won't be tired all the time. Look inside yourself. 2 teenagers that were athletes that were down in their luck. It said if you eat breakfast every morning, you could be a better athlete. Let's say Sammy. The other one was Flim Flam Man. The Flim Flam Man was about fad diets and diet foods and diet pills. It was saying why not to use these, why to eat a balanced diet. Talk about ahead of their time. And the other one was the racer lost his edge. And what that meant was they had a racer and he ate a lot of trash food and he got overweight. He was a race car driver. His wife would cook good for him and she was eating his wife's good cooking and he got overweight. And they were saying that, hey, champions have a healthy body. So they were teaching the kids young how to better get better nutrition in what they eat. This was 1972, y'all. This was my age group back then. And what's ironic is around 1970 to 1972, I went to New Saltby Elementary School. We had a coach. I wanted to go out for football. His name was Rusty Walker. To go out for his football team, you couldn't smoke. I was smoking. You couldn't drink soft drinks. I was drinking about 12 a day. And you had to wear long white socks. You couldn't wear colored socks, whatever that meant. That was a discipline thing. But here's the thing. Till today, I don't drink soft drinks and I don't smoke cigarettes. That man right there influenced me to quit. Now, guess what? I couldn't play football because I had allergies and I had to quit. I had to wait to ninth grade to play. But that one man, by that statement, made me quit all that for life. So that's how much influence they were having on kids at the time. Very powerful show. And like I said, that was funded by Kansas State University. Lane, you made it back, huh?
Made it back.
Okay, now we're just letting all this stuff just come together and let it cook together. And I'm going to let it cook a little bit, then we're going to bring our potatoes in and our carrots in. Now I'm going to bring these carrots in. Carrots do take a little longer to cook. And if you're cooking these vegetables and there's any vegetable that you don't like, that's okay. You can not put the vegetables. What you doing, Lane? Go back to comments. You can not put the vegetables in. Okay? Yeah, Coach Walker and Coach Jenkins, that was them. That's right, Kim. I forgot about Coach Jenkins. They were real influential in me developing one really healthy habit. You remember back then, they were putting cane sugar, the soft drinks were 12-ounce bottles, not 20-ounce, not 32-ounce. They were 12-ounce bottles. Or they were a little 10-ounce cup that you got in a fountain drink machine. And they were made with cane syrup, not high fructose corn syrup. They were made with cane sugar. So the soft drinks were a lot different then. Now you have the high fructose corn syrup. You have this, which is more addictive. You have the diet drinks that didn't exist back then. Man, am I glad? Am I glad that man changed my life? Do you put cabbage in it? Roland, I don't, but that's a good idea. Our cabbage will go awesome in here. Another thing, think about it, Hobo Stew. They're out there collecting, they're picking up vegetables along the way. They're just gathering as they go. Somebody's got a head of cabbage in their yard. Guess what? That cabbage is going in there. Also, you're talking about a cabbage, but anything like that could go in here. That would be really, really good. So I like the idea of cabbage. Butter beans. Butter beans would have been really good in here. And I almost put them in. But I was pretty loaded down with vegetables. So I decided to back off. But butter beans would have been really good in here. Field peas. If you like field peas, that would go good in here. Give it a whole different taste now. All right, man. We got everything rolling in here. Rolling. Okay, a little sweet potatoes and a little white potatoes. And put our little shallots in. So right now we're just gonna let it cook. Like I remember, if I was cooking this on the stove and I was cooking it for me, I'd be slowing this roll a little bit. We're pushing it for an hour to get it done, but it's coming along really well right now. We're gonna let all this cook good. Now let's say you wanted to cut back on the roux and maybe not make as much roux or not put a roux at all, which is what they did. How would they thicken it? Put your more potatoes in the beginning. Put your half of your potatoes in the beginning. Let them boil. Let them get soft and smash the potatoes. That would help those starches in that potatoes. Those potatoes would actually help thicken this stew. They would also use cornstarch back then. They could put a little cornstarch. Another thing they would put to thicken it, they would have put raw milk, whole milk. If you remember, if you go back to the 60s, you had it's either a quart or half gallon of milk, came in a glass bottle, had a little cap on it, a little paper cap. When you open it, there was a layer of fat about this thick. Shook it up, and that fat was all in throughout the milk. That's what thickened this stew. Take a half and half. Take a heavy whip. Basically, that's what you had in the milk back then. So they could use the milk the cow, cook it in the stew, and it would thicken the stew. Hey, Ryan, what's going on, man? Because every time I read that they were thickening stews with milk, it would blow my mind. I couldn't figure out how they were doing it. It makes sense. Okay, let's take a look inside that pot. Man, there's a lot of color in this pot. Okay? Got me a little sip of beer there. So it's really got a perfect color. And it's and the way I started the roux, and usually people ask how much oil. I use a half a pound of lard. Okay, we're gonna let this cook down a little bit. Now, one of the things I like to bring, I'm going to bring a little beef base and chicken base in it. Now, that deer gave it a good beef taste. I'm not bringing much beef base in it, okay? And if you're going to buy a beef base, make sure it's a paste, not a powder. Those powders are really bad. Look at the ingredients on it. Make sure you're getting a good one. Make sure you see a lot of natural ingredients. Watch the sodium and make damn sure there's no MSG in it. And I'm gonna bring a little chicken base in it. Now, if you want to make your own chicken stock, borrow you some chicken backs, chicken necks, chicken feet, all that kind of stuff like that. Make you a good chicken stock. I have a friend of mine. He raised chickens, and I made a chicken sausage for him every year. He would keep all the bones and keep all the feet, so he can make a lot of stock, and he put that stock in his freezer. And it was last Saturday, 33 gallons of red bean gumbo, 129 quarts. We sold out in an hour and a half. Man, way to go, Ryan. So, man, that was, and Ron, what was that for again? 33 gallons of red bean gumbo. That's a lot of damn gumbo, let me tell you. And I think it was a good day. I think it was a cold day that day, so that sure did help. And talking about dinners, man, look, we had our dirty rice and baked chicken dinners Sunday. I want to thank everybody. It was a huge success. We sold 130 lunches. Not bad for the first time ever doing it. So it was definitely a very huge success. We're going to do it again this month, February. On February 26th, I'll have that out in Facebook. But we're going to do it on February 26th again. We'll do the same meal. And then the next month, I'm going to change the jambalaya white beans. Hey, I found some shrimp dust at Rouse's and Gonzalez. Okay, you finally found some. Damn, but man, these things are hard to find. I wrote it. They got your house in reserve, yeah. When I was assigned to Port Lavaca in Texas, I also put white and yellow hominy grits in my mulligan stew. Tony, that's a good idea. I can see why that would work well. I just ordered me some today. Except I used the stone ground grits. You could put that in and it would take a long time to cook. It would actually work really well in this stew if you wanted to put it in the stew. You don't put the 3-minute grits in here. All right. Take a look inside that pot. And this thing is coming along really, really well. Now we're going to start bringing a little seasoning in. Wendy's in the Plaza has shrimp dust also. So if I had, there's one time I had trouble getting it. It was really hard to get. So let's give them sugarcane farmers a little loving. And baby, you got to bring a little crystal into your life. All right. I'm going to bring a little bit of that Himalayan salt in. We're just going to let this keep on cooking. Now, if you were cooking this home, slow your roll. Let it just a little bit above the bloop bloop level. And let it just slow cook. This is when you want to let it slow cook. So Kim says, the shrimp dust goes a long way. Its taste is powerful. Man, look, it's intense. So unless you have a really big pot, you don't want to use a whole bag. If once you open the bag, you want to keep it, put it in the freezer. But I went a little while, I couldn't get it. A little bit black pepper. A little bit red pepper. A little bit black pepper. And it's going to take me a little time to get it seasoned because I don't have a lot of my smoked meats in. All the meats I'm putting in right now have no seasoning. So we're going to have to bring this flavor up a little bit at a time. Bring this seasoning up. Oh, Lord. I don't know if y'all can smell it, but this thing is smelling good. What's up, Hollywood? Okay, now it's just getting a taste for seasoning, okay? Hollywood, we're cooking a little mulligan stew. I just put some of that sugarcane juice in there. This thing is kicking in already. Believe it or not, that little bit salt I just put in, nailed it. That pepper, a little bit of pepper I put in, you taste it right here when it's going down, so that's good. All right, Tony said it was how many corn? Okay. Let's get a little bit of this gravy in here. Because now it's time for a French bread taste. This baby's coming along good. You can taste all the vegetables really starting to blend together right now. Let's see, Melissa, how much mushroom did you add? Oh, I had a nice little bowl like this, Melissa. We had a nice little bowl. Hey, Charmaine. Hollywood said, yeah, Hollywood, you got to come get some. All you're doing is doing this. You're talking. Okay. Hollywood would be Elaine's favorite cousin. Let's see. Oh. David, every now and then, Facebook gets off its medicine. Some people don't get the notice. I don't know why I send it out, and I have no idea why it happens. So you just might want to check in the evening on every Wednesday. But people tell me that. I have no idea what goes on. I think Facebook gets off its medicine every now and then and doesn't send it out, gets attitude. But Chanda, a follower from North Carolina, welcome aboard. Mike says it's blurred tonight. It might be that bourbon he's sipping over there. Mike, I know the feeling, brother. French bread, Melissa, this is us, baby. Yeah. You ain't got a thing if you ain't got that swing, baby. Lord. Now, the thing is just that all these vegetables have to come together in a bowl. I can taste it. Every time I take a taste, you get more of those vegetables coming together. I find everybody drinking bourbon tonight. Everybody's getting vision problems. Elaine, is that screen it's clear on the computer? So my computer's clear, my TV's clear, so I don't know what's happening once it leaves here and it's going out into cyberspace. It was having that trouble a while ago, and it kind of went away, and now it's coming back. Okay. Now it's time to get a little bowl. Take y'all peek. Come on into the pot. Man, look at this. Look at this. John, how's everybody doing? Everybody doing good tonight. Okay. Let me see if I can grab a piece of that deer. One good thing about using deer meat, it's very healthy, it's very nutritious, high in protein, and just really just very healthy for you. That's one good thing. If you're going to use a meat, you don't want a ribeye in here, okay? You want something that's very lean, like a round steak, like a sirloin. If you get it where it's a select piece of meat, it'll take longer to cook. It'll take a little longer to fry down. It's going to give you more flavor. If you get it a choice piece of meat, it's going to have a little bit marble to it, and it's going to give you even better. But use something like a sirloin or like a sirloin roast or round. Then you're going to come out making a better mulligan stew. Let's see, Melissa. Because they got the spotty boogie. That's right, baby. Hollywood, I had pizza for supper tonight. Hollywood, I'll call this pizza, call it anything you want, but this damn thing good. Gina said, it's been blurred for her, but she's enjoying the show. Thank you for hanging there, Gina. Okay, Kim, name all the veggies. I had peas, corn, potatoes. I had sweet potatoes and Yukon Gold potatoes and mushrooms. I'm trying to think what else I put in there. And carrots. Now, I didn't have celery because I didn't have a chance to go get in it. But normally I had the onions and bell peppers. Normally I would have some celery in there too. That's my piece of deer. Oh. All right, Marcos. Man, if that don't get you shaking and baking, nothing will. Carrots are getting soft. I want to give me a potato. I want to check my potatoes. I'm going to try to grab one of each. I cut them kind of small so it wouldn't take long. I cut all my vegetables pretty small so it wouldn't take long to cook. Okay. So I got me one of the Yukon Gold potatoes and one of the sweet potatoes. And what I'm finding out when you cook stews and anything you're cooking that calls for potatoes, if you throw your little sweet potato in, and this is, I never would have thought, but sweet potatoes are awesome in all these dishes. Well, Rocky, come on over. You know where we at? Oh, man. Oh, this is good. Buddy, you always tasting the French bread. Is there any particular reason? Or is that just a Spuddy thing? Howard, it's just a Spuddy thing. But one of the things I grew up on, living in St. Rose, we were close to the city, was Leinheim or Rising. One of those would deliver bread, French bread, to our grocery store. And the French bread was this tall, not wrapped, just in a paper bag, 10 French breads to the bag. I ate French bread every day of my life growing up. I guess that's why I love French bread. Now, I save it for my show, but yeah, it's just a Spuddy thing. I'd rather eat this stew over a piece of bread, French bread, than over rice. Oh, boy. Boy, can y'all see how that tastes good? Lord. So now it's just a matter, everything's this close to being cooked. My peas are soft, my carrots are soft, my potatoes are getting soft. Probably about another 5 minutes, this thing's going to be done. The peas and corn, I'm going to tell you, using those IQF peas, IQF corn, is going to give you more flavor in this stew than if you were to use them out the can. Keep that in mind. Good thing about this stew is you can add or delete veggies according to your taste. Leinheimer is the best. Yep, that's what we had. Chris Norman's store, Kim. St. Rose, Louisiana. Sometimes it was Leinheimer, sometimes it was Rising. Show you how New Orleans was. We'd go to the French market. And when we go to the French market, I think I got a bunch of flour on me. We'd go out to the French market and we'd be driving to the French market delivering tomatoes. And driving, delivering those tomatoes, all the bread factories were baking their bread. Sunbeam, Leinheimer, Risings. There was another one. I can't think of the name of it. They had 4 bread companies. You'd ride along the interstate and you could smell the bread cooking 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh, it was awesome. Oh, y'all. Okay. Man, this is slamming. So you want a good meal to cook? Man, tomorrow's another cold day. That nasty weather we had yesterday, Sunbeam. Now, Sunbeam was like right down the interstate, Lucy. That thing was awesome. You would just smell it as soon as a mile before you got to it. But now the wind was blowing. Tomorrow, nice cold day. This morning, would have been a perfect day for this stew. So it's one of those comfort foods for a day where, man, really can't go do anything. You want something really good and warm, make your heart feel good. This is it. Right around Howard Avenue and I-10, smell was awesome. That's it, Kim. See, I can tell all the people that grew up in the river parishes going to New Orleans. Okay. It's got a good consistency to it, a good thickness to it. Tomorrow, this thing's going to be, damn, bless me, a lot tastier, and it's going to be a little thicker. You're probably going to have to add a little water to this tomorrow. I'm going to bring a little bit in right now. But tomorrow when you warm it up, it's going to be a lot better. So there's your Mulligan Stew for tonight. Hobo Stew, Community Stew. It was part of a TV show. It was part of competition in the Boy Scouts. Different communities had. And they also had Mulligan Stew parties. Ladies would have Mulligan Stew parties. And so in the neighborhood, let's say, because you remember you had little small communities, I might give a community a Mulligan Stew party and invite all my friends. And these were high, kind of high class parties. They weren't, parties for the poor people. They were parties for the elite people. So Mulligan Stew wasn't just about the hobos, the poor. It was also people. It was like a fad. It looked like a fad. When you read in the newspapers, a lot of people having parties, doing a lot of stuff with this Mulligan Stew. So it's really awesome to read about it, and really awesome to research it, saying it's not just a poor man's stew. It was a rich man's stew, a poor man's stew. It was a hungry man's stew. It was our stew. So there you go. Because making out good, Hollywood. Trey said he enjoyed it, blurry and all. So next Wednesday, I'm not really sure what I'm cooking yet. I'm sure I'll think of something up. I have a list of stuff, a list of the suggestions that we came across. So I'll be cooking off of that list. But in the meantime, we're going to see y'all next week. God bless y'all. Love y'all. Laissez les bon temps rouler, baby.
I don't cry when it rains no more, or I get dirt on my shoes. I don't mind climbing 8 more floors, 'cause these stairs are all heavy.